From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
Coming up on AgDay, from grain to mill to baking, how students are learning by taking hands-on.
The proof's in the flavor.
Bottom line, there's a really serious problem in China.
The coronavirus crisis grows in China as the outbreak starts to affect that nation's economy. And USDA releases new numbers that show the new trade deal with China may already be having an impact.
And I think the biggest adjustment showed up in a couple of places.
Good morning, I'm Clint Griffiths. Many were wondering what the new World Agricultural Supply and Demand Estimate report would show with regard to China and the new Phase 1 trade deal. That deal is scheduled to take effect Saturday, and USDA did account for some of the potential impacts. Let's start with corn. USDA leaving the outlook little changed from January, saying exports are lowered 50 million bushels due to the slow pace of shipments, but there's a 50 million bushel increase in corn used for ethanol. Ending stocks pegged at 1.89 billion bushels, matching January and higher than trade estimates.
USDA did respect the fact that corn for ethanol has seen some good news, better production in the past 8 weeks, as well as some confirmed numbers now suggesting that the quality is also a problem at the plants as well. So that did offset the lower exports seen.
With soybeans, USDA is calling for increased exports and lower ending stocks. It's projecting an increase in exports over last month because of China. Now, ending stocks are 425 million bushels. That's lower than trade estimates and 50 million bushels fewer than January. Speaking with AgriTalk's Chip Flory, he told me it all comes down to price.
We're sitting at 425 million bushels. Sounds like good news, right? I mean, we didn't change the supply. We increased our total use by 50 million bushels, and that was the incentive for the World Board to take 25 cents off the expected national average on-farm cash price for soybeans, which is now down at $8.75. So I'm glad that they reacted to the lower price by increasing demand. It's not that demand was higher to increase the price, it's that price was lower to increase demand.
The outlook for U.S. wheat is for stable supplies, increased exports, and decreased ending stocks. Ending stocks at 940 million bushels. That's down 25 million bushels from January and just below trade estimates. Now let's look at world ending stocks. USDA putting corn below January's estimate with larger production and consumption, but soybeans were increased due to increased production for Brazil and favorable weather there, including improved rainfall in southern and northeastern growing areas. As for wheat, only a slight drop in supplies from January.
Probably one of the biggest changes that USDA made in the WASDE report for the month of February was the increase in the South American, the Brazilian soybean crop to a record 125 million metric tons, or about 4.6 billion bushels of soybeans.
People are slowly returning to work in major cities in China as the death toll continues to grow from the deadly coronavirus. Officials advising companies check workers' temperatures at offices or set up quarantine areas. Some companies are telling workers to continue working from home. Others are keeping factories closed. The outbreak has sent food prices in the country soaring, with price inflation hitting 5.4% in January. Now, the price of pork has more than doubled from a year ago, up 116%. Vegetables are up 17%, and some health experts fear we may not be getting a complete picture about the problem. Financial services company Rabobank taking a closer look at the coronavirus. It says the impact on farm products will be limited in the short term, since manufacturers usually have raw material inventory to last 45 days. But Chinese animal feed consumption will remain stagnant in the short term as the virus postpones farmers' decision to rebuild hog herds and poultry farms' cull stock. Experts believe animal protein consumption likely dropped greatly in January and February, and demand will remain weak throughout the first half of this year if the virus isn't brought under control until May or June. An update on a story we've been following. The largest swarm invasion of locusts in 25 years is going on right now in Africa. The swarms of billions of locusts have been destroying crops in Kenya. Now, experts say several nations in the Horn of Africa could face food insecurity due to the swarm, worsening the already difficult food situation.
There are 13 million people in the affected countries, Ethiopia, Kenya, Somalia, who are severely food insecure now. 10 million of those people are in the places affected by the locusts.
Experts warn that immediate action is needed before new rainfall in the weeks ahead brings fresh vegetation to feed new generations of locusts. Portions of the South are continuing to get hammered by rain, and now flooding is also an issue. Meteorologist Cindy Clausen joins us with the latest. Cindy.
Yeah, that's right, Clinton. Lots of rain leads to flooding, but we've also had some severe weather in parts of the southeast as well. I've seen amounts 10 to 15 plus inches over the past 30 days. In fact, I've heard of some spots getting even 6 inches in the past couple of days. Now, this is what our model is estimating over the past 24 hours, and the focus has really been in the northeastern part of Texas and into parts of Arkansas. Let's add on the next 24 hours, those areas getting even more rain, but heavy rain pushing back into some of those other areas of the southeast that have been hit hard by some heavy rain over the past few weeks. So that's going to be including parts of Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, on up into Kentucky. So heavy rain is going to continue. Now let's switch gears. In other portions of the country, it's a winter wonderland right now for snow lovers. Ben Tilburg of Auburndale, Wisconsin, sharing this photo with us, saying nature does not disappoint. And you can see why. The sun shining right on through that tree covered in snow. And there's certainly a lot of snow in this picture. Thanks so much for sharing that with us. Coming up in just a few minutes, we'll take a look at that national forecast. Clinton.
Former USDA Secretary and Iowa Governor Tom Vilsack has hit the jackpot. The current president and CEO of the U.S. Dairy Council recently claimed a $150,000 prize in the Iowa State Powerball Lottery. Vilsack says he bought the $2 ticket ahead of the January 22nd drawing, but forgot to check it until a week later. He says he plans to give some money to his church, his children, and then use the rest to pay off a mortgage. He says paying that mortgage down will help make retirement a little more comfortable than it might have been otherwise. We'll dig into USDA's latest report a little deeper, coming up next in analysis with Rich Nelson of Allendale Incorporated. And later, there's nothing like the taste of fresh baked bread. And some college students are involved in the whole process from seed to table, as you'll see in the country. Some good news about the economy from Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell. He says the U.S. economy is healthy currently with steady growth and unemployment at a half-century low. Powell says the deadly virus in China is the principal risk to that outlook right now. He made those statements while delivering the Fed's semi-annual monetary report to Congress. Now, Powell adding the Fed is content with where interest rates are currently, suggesting no further rate cuts are being talked about unless economic conditions change. We're joined in studio today by Rich Nelson, Allendale Incorporated. And Rich, let's kind of go through this report that USDA rolled out here in February. And I think the question that a lot of us want to know is, does this report change anything as we get ready for planning in 2020?
We'll simply say it's a start for USDA to recognize what could be in a very eventful year ahead of us here.
Okay. Explain that. What do you mean?
So it does give USDA some credence in saying they are respecting maybe part of the Phase 1 agreement at this point in time, only some major changes on the soybean export side. But if there is a full agreement and it's fully followed through, there will be more follow through in the coming months here.
Yeah. As we start to talk about planning and the crop and the acreage mix, what do you see so far as the landscape? Are we still heavy corn going into this year?
Too heavy corn. No doubt about it. Right now, the general trade discussion is 4 to 8 million acres extra for corn. Soybeans maybe in that 5 to 9 million acre range. To be honest, though, if this trade agreement does go through and is fully implemented, we have a need for at least 10 million soybeans here.
Okay. Well, that would be encouraging, right, to see that demand spike and surge. What are we waiting to see for indicators on that?
And the market does not want to believe this really until we actually see those sales show up in our hands, meaning next week or the week after that or the week after that.
Okay, so we've got a couple of weeks here to try to figure some of that out. What about for the folks down in the southern tier of states where they've got cotton, they've got peanuts, they have soybeans, they have corn, that are all potential crops? Do you see something winning out down there?
You know, especially soybeans, just like the cotton argument right now for the southern producers, that's all based on this trade deal discussion.
Okay.
So we have seen some support in recent days, but both of them are hinging on seeing confirmed sales.
What about your outlook for 2020 here? What's your read on as we start this planting season in a new year?
A lot of it will depend on really what we see for price action from now all the way through May. In other words, we want to see some higher soybean prices to get those acreage numbers involved. Otherwise, we're looking at some corn prices, maybe the top end for new crop on futures reaching that 410 to 420. If we do get this more reasonable change in acres, you can probably argue in the 440 range.
Okay, well, it'll be good stuff to watch as we go forward. Appreciate it as always, Rich. Thanks for being here. We'll be back with more Ag Day coming up in just a minute.
To talk to Rich Nelson one-on-one, call 800-262-7538. Join Andrew McCrae for Farming the Countryside, a farmer-focused podcast all about production agriculture. Brought to you by Pivot Bio Proven, the nitrogen-producing microbes that stay put, whether or not. Visit pivotbio.com.
Meteorologist Cindy Clausen taking a look at our national forecast. And Cindy, as you described to me, it's just going to kind of be a mess here for the next few days.
It really is, and the eastern part of the country has just been seeing storm after storm, and especially the southeast with the rain, but then some areas have just been getting hit with the snow over and over again. So we have two systems that we're really watching here. We're going to be seeing the very wet one here in the western Gulf Coast states. That's going to be moving up through the Tennessee and Ohio valleys. Secondary front that's going to be coming from the north. So those systems are going to sort of combine as we get into the next couple of days, making for some really messy weather in the eastern half of the country. Let's see how it all plays out today. High pressure moves away. We see the low starting to move up towards the boot heel of Missouri. We've got the northern front coming down, making it into the Great Lakes. Very cold air, by the way, on the back side of this front. We're really going to be feeling that as we get into the next couple of days, but luckily for most areas, it's fairly short-lived. Overnight, that low continues to move on in towards the mid-Atlantic states, into the northeast. So notice the snow that we're going to be seeing piling up as we get into parts of the eastern Great Lakes and into the northeast. Showers and thunderstorms along our front in the southeastern United States. Then, as we get through the day on Thursday, that high pressure and that cold air continues to sink down. We got some lake effect snow in parts of the Great Lakes. Everything still moves on off to the east with snow to the north, showers and thunderstorms in the southeast, and we'll have another system starting to approach the northwest, which has actually been a little bit more quiet over the past couple of days. All right, here's a look at that precipitation. Again, the focus is really the southeast, where we see that low tracking into the Tennessee and Ohio valleys over the next 24 hours, and we'll start to add a little bit more into the northwest as well, but you've been a little bit more quiet, as I said. Now, snowfall, a lot of it's been just in those higher elevations in parts of the west, but we're going to see that low tracking to the northeast and that secondary front coming down from the north. So look for some snow, especially along much of the eastern Corn Belt and into the northeast. Look at these temperatures, high of 2 below zero in Bismarck as we get into this afternoon. So that cold air continues to sink down as that front makes a more southward movement, well below zero for those overnight lows. And as we get into tomorrow, we're going to see those temperatures, that cold air, move a little bit further to the east, high well below zero tomorrow afternoon as you get into the upper Midwest. All right, let's take a look at that jet stream. And you can see that trough that's moving across the country, that cold air, but it is somewhat short-lived. Another little trough moves in this weekend, and as we get into the early part of next week, kind of a deeper trough, but not super cold. The really cold air kind of stays up into Canada, but we're going to probably see another round of some stormy weather on the front side of that trough. That's a look at your national forecast. Now let's check on the weather where you live. Baker City, Oregon, partly cloudy for you today with a high of 42 degrees. Cookietown, Oklahoma, rain likely and a high of 48. And Pye, West Virginia, rain likely, getting a bit breezy later on, a high of 57.
In this week's America's Conservation Ag Movement, more retailers are taking farm fresh to a whole new level by actually putting small farms in the aisles. Kroger and Whole Foods installing indoor farms. These high-tech farms have LED lighting and technology that automates a lot of the growing cycle. Experts say with many retailers having to shift to selling things online, it's freeing up shelf space, and the indoor farms offer a supply line as well as what's known as food theater. GroceryDive.com reports Hy-Vee and H-E-B's Central Market stores are also trying out growing operations. This trend is also growing in Europe and Japan, where retailers are growing leafy greens, herbs, and vegetables in hundreds of stores. New concerns about African swine fever and how long it can linger in feed. Plus, a group of women team up to help make some young producers' dreams come true. Next. The investigation continues into African swine fever and what can be done to stop it. Now, new research is looking into how long the virus can survive in feed. And that research is showing it lasts much longer than originally thought. Earlier studies looked into the half-life of a virus similar to foot and mouth disease. Scientists looking into how long it takes for half of the virus that may be contaminating feed or feed ingredients to die off naturally. What they found is that ASF lasts even longer than the virus they tested. What does this mean for U.S. producers? Well, experts say feed component holding times could be key. Complete information about feed holding time calculations is posted on the Swine Health Information Center website. A great story about keeping alive the tradition of raising pigs and showing them for future generations, and it's all thanks to three friends. The three Texas women banded together to raise money for exhibitors at this year's Fort Worth Stock Show Sale of Champions this past weekend. Now, the women purchased 2 barrows for a total of $32,500. One was a Champion Duroc barrow that would sell for $20,000. That was owned by a 10-year-old girl. The other, the Reserve Champion Duroc barrow, owned by a teenager. Now, they founded the nonprofit corporation Band of Barrows. Their mission to raise money from people and businesses to support the junior barrow exhibitors. The goal was to raise $25,000 this year, but they raised over $35,000. And one of the women says, quote, "It's not about winning or losing. It's about the pride one puts into their project and what they take away and apply to their future," end quote. Coming up, baking bread. It takes a lot of work, and several college students are learning what it takes with help from one grower. Next. College students are working with a farm in Kentucky that grows grains developed by a UK wheat breeder. And as Jeff Franklin reports, students learn what goes into those fresh baked breads.
Lovely. So what do we have, Sarah?
We have some Kentucky-grown rye and some Edison wheat for you.
Lovely.
Sarah Halcomb from Walnut Grove Farm in Logan County made this delivery to the University of Kentucky's chef-in-residence, Bob Perry, for the Dietetics and Human Nutrition program. The grain from the wheat grown on the Halcomb's family farm will be processed in this newly purchased mill and be used in fresh baked goods by DHN students.
We knew we had to have a mill, and when we have a mill, now we can teach the students to go from the raw material, whole grains. We know where it's sourced. We have the mill. We could teach them how to mill, then teach them the sifting, and then teach the ultimate bread recipe. And the proof's in the flavor.
The flavor comes from the grain's variety called Edison, developed in the Pacific Northwest.
And so it's nutty and sweet.
UK wheat breeder Dave Van Sanford adapted the wheat to grow in Kentucky's climate by altering the planting schedule.
This variety, Edison, is a hard white spring wheat, which is completely in opposition to the types of wheat that we normally grow. Freshly milled whole wheat flour tastes fantastic, and it just defies the expectation that most people have for whole grain products.
So like where this is going to go at...
Sarah Halcomb's late father-in-law, Don Halcomb, was a UK cooperator for over 30 years, allowing Van Sanford and other UK researchers to grow variety trials on his Logan County farm, like the Edison wheat.
We work with Dave very closely on all of his plots, and so he brought up the ideas like, hey, would you want to grow 5 acres and see what happens? And we had the room and the capability to try it out, and so we did.
Perry recently purchased this mill for milling grains, and it will be used to mill the grain from the Edison wheat. The fresh milled flour will go into baked items like this, and other baked goods at the Lemon Tree, where DHN students learn food production using Kentucky-grown products, serving up a 3-course lunch meal twice weekly.
This is a true value chain. Dr. Van Sanford breeds the wheat, the Holcombs farm the wheat, we mill the wheat, we feed it to the customer. It's a complete value chain.
From the University of Kentucky College of Agriculture, Food and Environment, I'm Jeff Franklin reporting.
All right, thanks, Jeff. And that's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in. From all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day out in farm country.